Today, debating for the position of Vice President of University Affairs, we have Mohammed Ekrat from the RISE SDSU slate and Trinity Dang from the Blueprint SDSU slate. Before we get started, candidates, we just wanted to go over a couple of ground rules. First and foremost, during the debate, please be respectful to your fellow candidates by speaking only when it is your turn and by respecting the time limits set forth by the moderators for each question. Do you guys have any questions?
No questions.
Perfect. To open, we will start with 1 minute per candidate for opening statements. Mohammed, we will start with your opening statement, and we will start your minute when Trinity nods her head. And when you have 30 seconds, Jen will raise your paper like this. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, you can start.
Hello, everyone. First of all, Ramadan Mubarak. My name is Mohammed Ekrat. I'm a second-year civil engineering student with a minor in Islamic and Arabic studies. Above all of that, I am a Muslim, Arab, and Palestinian. Thank you to everyone attending this debate, and thank you to the Daily Aztec for putting this together. We must first recognize that we are on the land of the Kumeyaid. This is a point of information that seems to be often ignored, and we're not going to play with that. I'm blessed to be running for this position of Vice President of University Affairs. We have had a long list of arising issues on campus that have been far too long ignored. Through various factors, such as my experience, my goals, and my passion, I believe that I am the best fit for this position. I have been involved in plenty of organizations, both on and off campus, as well as working for the Center for Intercultural Relations just upstairs. These experiences have given me the proper skills to take on this position.
That is time.
Thank you,
Mohammed. All right, now Trinity. We will go ahead and start your minute for your opening statement.
Hi everyone, my name is Trinity Dang, and I am running to be your next Vice President of University Affairs. First things first, I want to thank the Daily Aztec for hosting this debate. I also want to thank Mohammed for being here, so I'm not alone. And I also want to thank everyone who has showed up in attendance and cares enough about AS elections and what each of us up here stand for. I'm majoring in criminal justice with a certificate in public law, and I have a double minor in social and personality psychology and business administration. Currently, I serve as your College of PSFA AS representative. I also sit on the University Affairs Board, and I'm an advocate in the University Senate for the Student Grievances Committee. As far as my goals, I want to establish a Student Bill of Rights and establish a Middle Eastern North African Student Resource Center here on campus. I also want to extend the Your Voice Matters initiative to push for more open forums to expand the strength of student voice outside of just the University Affairs Board. Thank you for your consideration and me as your Vice President of University Affairs.
Thank you both for that. For the first part of this debate, we will be asking you general questions that relate to the position of VP of University Affairs, and then once we are done with those, we will go into individual questions that relate to the statements that you put out as candidates. For these general questions, you will get 2 minutes each, and again, we stress that you do not talk whenever it is not your turn in respect of your fellow candidate. Trinity, you will go with our first question. You have 2 minutes. What inspired you to run for Vice President of University Affairs? You may start.
I have had the pleasure of working with the current Vice President of University Affairs and the former Vice President of University Affairs. They have been such an inspiration to me in all that they have accomplished in AS, working extremely hard to proactively represent the student voice. However, I have not always been in AS. Because of this, I see the divide between students involved in AS and students who aren't. I want to be an advocate for all the students in addressing concerns on campus, formulating tangible action steps towards building an accurately represented Associated Students.
All right. Mohammed, we would like to pose the same question to you. What inspired you to run for Vice President of University Affairs? And your 2 minutes starts now.
So I always believed that the voice of the student is above all else. I came into SDSU not knowing much about advocacy and about how to be involved. And then, of course, everything unfolded in the past 5 months with the massacre in Gaza. We saw a rise in hatred on campus to many various marginalized groups, and I wanted to get involved. And I was so happy that there was a channel being Associated Students that you can voice your concerns. but I was so disappointed with the slow process that it takes to get anything done, the lack of action, the fact that me and my peers had to come up weekly, shamefully just walking up and like begging for help. That's why I took this position on, because I see that more action needs to be taken. Students need to be taking these issues much more seriously. I've been inspired by the current exec team on Associated Students, but I think that we can do a lot more, and I think I'm the best fit for this position for that regard.
Thank you. Trinity, for your next question. How do you intend to effectively represent student interests within the University Senate, Senate committees, and other academic policy-making bodies? You have 2 minutes, and that starts now.
Because I have been an AS representative on the College of PSFA, I have seen issues arise that have not been effectively addressed on a university level. For example, break-ins in the art building and a pole literally coming through the music building's elevator. And because of this, I want to, there's a spider. I want to accurately address the underlying issues of areas that the university tends to neglect and advocate for students who are at a detriment because of these problems. I've also sat on the University Affairs Board, and because of that, I have seen issues that have risen in regards to exams on weekends and grading procedures that just need to be addressed. Because students are clearly unhappy with the unlimited powers that professors seem to have. Because of this, I would like to implement a student bill of rights to promote the student voice on a classroom level, upholding grading transparency between students and faculty. Thank you.
Thank you. Mohammed, we put the same question towards you. How do you intend to effectively represent student interests within the University Senate, Senate committees, and other academic policy-making bodies? You have 2 minutes, and that's now.
So the way I've seen it in the past 2 years is that students, every single student has concerns, has interests, things they'd like to get changed, things they'd like to have be done in the school. The issue is the lack of proper channels. I've met a lot of people who have been harassed on campus and faced hate incidents, yet they don't know how to report it. They don't know who to go to even get something done. My goal as a vice president of university affairs would be to simplify this, to create a robust system in which a student doesn't need to stress after they've already been attacked. A student does not need to think about their next action when they've been called a slur on campus, when they've been physically attacked. It's such a shame when I have my own friends who faced hate incidents in the past month, and yet they still don't know what to do about it. They still don't know the proper channels to go through. In this position, I plan to work with every aspect of this university so that a student does not need to stress about what channel they need to go through. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We are actually going to stay with Mohammed for this next question. How do you plan to navigate potential conflicts or disagreements between student interests and university policies? And how would you work towards finding mutually beneficial solutions? You have 2 minutes, and it starts now.
I think ultimately speaking, it comes down to perspectives. There's always going to be conflicting views. You know, the students are always going to be, they're going to have more of that passion. The administration is going to always push back. We've seen that in the past 5 months. My goal would be to bridge that gap. The issue is that the student voice is not heard enough in this regard. You'd think it's a 50-50, conflict with opinions going on either side, but in reality, everything is pit against the student. My goal would be to level this. My goal would be that a student feels that their voice is actually heard. This would mean pushing forth the Your Voice Matters initiative. We would have various campaigns and panels so students can give their perspective. It's easy for administration to just read about a student perspective, but once they see a student face to face, it's not so easy to simply say no to a student. The administration shouldn't feel comfortable to push back any interest or concern that a student has. It is my goal to bring this change.
Thank you, Mohammed. Trinity, we pose the same question to you. How do you plan to navigate potential conflicts or disagreements between student interests and university policies? And how would you work towards finding mutually beneficial solutions? You have 2 minutes, and that starts now.
There is clearly a discrepancy between how university issues are communicated between those holding what are deemed powerful positions in AS and the average student who has no knowledge of what AS actually is. To address this issue, I'd want to host open forums and promote student outreach so those who aren't in AS know of all the university-wide conversations and issues that are being addressed in a less intimidating and more approachable manner. I would also want to ensure a streamlined communication of policy changes to hold AS accountable to truly being a liaison of students and university issues that directly impact students and organizations on campus. Thank you.
Thank you. Trinity, we're going to stay with you for this next question. How do you plan to foster collaboration and engagement among university students to gather input and feedback on academic policies and initiatives? You have 2 minutes, and that starts now.
So going back to that same discrepancy that I was addressing just earlier, I would want to host open forums, and this would allow students to This would allow students to address issues that they have with the faculty by, for example, asking Kevin Cartilage, who's the manager of my SDSU, and allowing him to sit on an open forum where students can ask people questions about what they want to see in my SDSU and changes that they want to implement. Also inviting other major faculty on the SDSU campus, like the head of the university police. I would also want to actively engage in the student life, so going out to classrooms, doing walkarounds, pushing the Your Voice Matters initiative way more than it is right now, not just within the University Affairs Board, but also in University Council and Campus Life Community Councils as well. Yes, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mohammed, we would like to push the same question to you. How do you plan to foster collaboration and engagement among university students to gather input and feedback on academic policies and initiatives? You have 2 minutes, and that starts now.
So I think this issue firstly goes back to creating systems of dialogue. Again, students should have a face-to-face with the people who make the rules, make the laws. Any student should be able to face the administration and face those people in those positions of power to make their voice heard. Creating a human-to-human connection fosters more change. In this way, we can actually get more done. We need to make sure that students know that their voice can be heard. A lot of students simply have the issue that they think there's no way to address their concern. They don't know that there's ways to reach the administration. It's not their fault though, because it's so hard to reach the administration. I myself, with my peers, tried to get to the administration for 5 months. It took 4 months to get a meeting with a couple of them. We couldn't even get to the president. This is not something that we should normalize at San Diego State University. We need to make sure that every student feels comfortable and able in knowing that they can reach out to any person in administration. And we are going to keep creating those systems of dialogue and having those direct lines of communication so that every student can be heard.
Thank you. Trinity, we'll go back to you for this next question. How would you measure the success of your initiatives aimed at enhancing student support and promoting cultural inclusivity? And what steps would you take to adjust your approach based on feedback from the student body? You have 2 minutes, and that starts now.
I want to put a big emphasis on being proactive instead of reactive. I think addressing the issues, for example, like rewriting bylaws so it works in favor of the student, since there's such a detachment between students who understand how the procedures work and those who don't. And also, again, holding AS accountable to be the liaison between students and university issues. I would also want to address the threads of the communication and lack of transparency does not uphold the university's promise to shared governance. So making sure that students are aware of such university policy changes and creating a better platform for them to share their concerns and knowing that their voices are heard.
Thank you. Mohammed, we come to you with the same question. How would you measure the success of your initiatives aimed at enhancing student support and promoting cultural inclusivity? And what steps would you take to adjust your approach based on feedback from the student body? You have 2 minutes, and that starts now.
I believe that the measure of success goes directly back to the students. Clearly right now there's a huge disappointment within the student body in having their voices heard. This success would be measured by seeing how much students are actually able to advocate for their concerns. We need to set precedent on this campus. When we choose to sit in silence until a tragedy happens, this comes with two effects. The students firstly feel vulnerable. The students feel that they are unsafe, that they can't even express their opinions or their freedom of speech on campus. The second effect, equally as terrible, is that the hateful people on campus, the people who have all this hate in their heart and want to commit terrible actions, feel more empowered. It's terrible, but it's the truth. When we see a bunch of tragedies happening over a couple of months with no reaction from the administration, logically speaking, what's going to happen? Those people are going to feel even more comfortable to keep carrying out their acts. That's how we know that we are not succeeding right now as a student body. And that is something I plan to change.
Thank you. Trinity, we go to you for this next question. This next question is in the context of the ongoing Israel-Palestine conflict. In recent years, and especially very recently, discussions surrounding the Israel-Palestine conflict have sometimes sparked tensions within university campuses, including our own. How do you plan to approach and facilitate constructive dialogue on this complex issue while ensuring an inclusive and respectful environment for all students, regardless of their perspective or background? You have 2 minutes, and this starts now.
So again, I have sat as the PSFA College AS representative, and because of this, I have sat on the university council meetings. Through this, I had the privilege of voting in favor of the Gaza ceasefire resolution, which was passed on Wednesday, February 28th. And what I would do to approach this issue is going directly to the bylaws. There was a lot of issues and student voices talking about how this resolution should have been passed sooner rather than later. And I think that in an effective way to accurately represent the student voice, that is something we need to address by going straight to what's preventing us from passing this in an effective and speedily manner. By doing this, I would want to rework the bylaws in favor of the student, so there's such a detachment between people who understand how the bylaws work in AS and obviously those not in AS. And it helps promote student accessibility in the future for more transparency, allowing more accessibility for students to voice their concerns in university meetings.
Thank you. Mohammed, we go to you with the same question. In recent years, discussions surrounding the Israel-Palestine conflict have sometimes sparked tensions within university campuses, including our own. How do you plan to approach and facilitate constructive dialogue on this complex issue while ensuring an inclusive and respectful environment for all students, regardless of their perspective or backgrounds? You have 2 minutes, and that starts now.
So my absolute goal would be to ensure that every single student, regardless of any background, should be able to be comfortable in expressing their opinion on any matter, including Israel and Palestine. To give some context on our school, in 2016, a group of pro-Palestinian students were doxxed. Their faces were shown all over campus with the title terrorist. This is going on till now. Luckily, we haven't had any posters of us, yet people come up to us calling us these words, commenting on our posts, even gun threats, death threats. This is not reflective of being inclusive and having freedom of speech. You know, when all of this started a few months ago, I knew a lot of passionate people who were terrified to even speak, given that the people that were exposed a couple years back were their older siblings, their friends, their family. Our goal would be to ensure that this stays in the past. This idea of a student getting doxxed and exposed for expressing their opinion should be in the history of SDSU. It should not be the present or the future. We are going to ensure that anything moving on in this school is reflective of our mission and our bylaws, and the fact that any student can express whatever they believe in freely.
Thank you. This is the last general question for the two of you, and then we will move on to the individual questions. Trinity, we move to you for this next question. Academic freedom is a fundamental principle within higher education, allowing for the open exchange of ideas and diverse perspectives. How do you envision upholding and promoting academic freedom within our university community, especially in light of potential challenges or controversies that may arise? You have 2 minutes, and that starts now.
With my position having a large emphasis on policy, I want to reiterate that one of my main goals in this position is to establish a student bill of rights. It's not new news that when you get an exam, let's say you don't do the greatest, and your professor doesn't let you see what you got wrong. This is something I want to change, and by being a student representative in this position, I would want to effectively establish a student bill of rights to keep faculty accountable for grading transparency and making sure that that students' voices are heard in a classroom setting. Thank you.
Mohammed, we go to you for this same question. Academic freedom is a fundamental principle within higher education, allowing for the open exchange of ideas and diverse perspectives. How do you envision upholding and promoting academic freedom within our university community, especially in light of potential challenges or controversies that may arise? You have 2 minutes, and that starts now.
So this goes back to what I was just talking about. In terms of academic freedom at SDSU, it's unfortunate, but I don't want to say that we have it completely, given that a student cannot feel comfortable to just freely express their concerns, and a student doesn't even know the channel to go to address their concern. Repeating myself, I say that we must establish precedent. A student should feel instantly empowered to address their concerns before a tragedy happens. Issues should not be a ticking time bomb where we react after a tragedy. We need to establish direct communication between students and administration, thus that academic freedom can be properly felt. If a student has a fear, thinking that they must disable their LinkedIn so that their information is not leaked, then we do not have academic freedom. I'm sorry to anyone that thinks SDSU is perfect. It is not. We must create those channels and empower our students, and we must make it known to every single student. Creating the channels is not enough. After establishing that, we must make it known to everyone how to go about that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. These next questions will pertain specifically to the statements that you both submitted as part of your candidacy. And you will have 2 minutes and 30 seconds for these questions. Trinity, we will start with you. In your statement, you mentioned wanting to create a resource document. SDSU and AS already have a number of resource documents available online and in print. Can you elaborate on how you would differentiate this reference document you want to create and how you would disseminate it so that students are aware of it? You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and this starts now.
Yes, in this resource document, I would hope to uphold one of my main initiatives to establish a Middle Eastern North African Student Resource Center. I would choose to include all of the resources that SDSU offers, including AS, because a lot of people don't understand how much AS can really offer and do for them. I would want to make sure to emphasize what is available to students and what can be made available urgently to students, because in light of recent situations, it's not new news, again, it is not new news that students do not feel safe on this campus. So knowing what is available to them in urgent times and knowing what can be done effectively to accommodate their concerns and their safety issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mohammed, in your statement, you talked about establishing a system for reporting hate incidents on campus. SDSU already has a system in place for reporting incidents of discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. What do you want to do differently? How would you work collaboratively with SDSU administration and university police to enact these changes? You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and that starts now.
The issue I see with the current system for reporting hate is that it is simply not enough. When one of my friends was facing a death threat and they tried to talk to administration, the administration didn't even act shocked or didn't even offer any sort of support. Didn't even try to fake support. They instantly referred them to submit a form about the incident. And we followed. We submitted a bunch of forms and nothing happened. They said that it wasn't enough. I guess for some reason the school views that there needs to be a specific threshold of hate crimes that must be reached for them to even send out an email to the students. It's fully shameful, and it's honestly really disheartening as a student. It's hard to be proud to be here. We had to create our own database to collect all of these incidents and then send it forward. My goal would be to create something similar to that with the administration. We need to create a more intricate database where we can actually track what's happening, the time it's happening, reference it to location. At the end, the goal should be to create a statistical database. That way, we can actually track the trends going on from year to year. Otherwise, how do we know any progress that we're making? Just by sending out an email like, hey guys, stop saying mean words to each other. Honestly, it does nothing, and that's my opinion. Once you have statistics in place, you can track if something is moving up, if it's moving down, and then you can change your ways. That way you know if your actions are actually effective. And that is what I see needs to be changed within our system.
Thank you. Trinity, in both your statement and your answer to your last question, you mentioned wanting to create a Middle Eastern North African Students Center. How would you go about establishing lines of funding for the establishment of such a center? Furthermore, how would you collaborate with members of the Middle Eastern and North African communities on this establishment? You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and that starts now.
First, I would want to talk to the Vice President of Finance and just AS in general about the allocation of funding and what this funding would entail. I would also want to bring up in University Senate my proposal and also see what policies need to be passed and what funding can be allocated. I would also want to reach out to these communities that this resource center would affect and form a committee and in creating this resource center. So each person in this community can effectively advocate for what they want to see in this resource center and what their expectations are for this resource center to eventually be enacted.
Oh. Thank you. Mohammed, considering your commitment to advocating on behalf of all SDSU students, how do you plan to balance the diverse interests and needs of the student body when representing them within the University Senate and other academic policy-making bodies? You have 30 seconds. That starts now.
Yeah. So I think this goes back to creating those lines of communication. I'm blessed to be working at the Center for Intercultural Relations just upstairs, which actually serves as a safe space for Middle Eastern students. And through working there, I have seen a variety of perspectives from people of all backgrounds, giving me, a new perspective on the concerns of students. At the end of the day, the students are not a monolith. Every student has their own concerns. Sometimes these are conflicting. And when you compare it to the administration, there's a lot more conflict that goes on there. So this would go back to creating those areas of dialogue, allowing every student to voice their concern. That way the administration can put a face to the concern. It shouldn't be words on a paper or words on a screen that our president reads in regards to student concerns. A student should be able to face their administration directly and talk about their concerns.
Thank you. Trinity, in your statement, you mentioned wanting to establish a transparent grading bill of rights. What specific components would you include in this, and how do you believe it will benefit students and foster a fair academic environment? You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and that starts now.
Through establishing a Student Bill of Rights, this allows for the student voice to be promoted in a classroom setting. I feel that as a student representative on behalf of all SDSU students, it's very difficult to feel that you have any impact on your grade besides just studying for an exam, no matter how hard you study and you still fail. So implementing a student Bill of Rights would allow for grading transparency, and this would heavily affect all SDSU students to make sure that SDSU students are holding faculty accountable for what goes on behind closed doors. And this keeps transparency between the faculty and students, and also just allows for students to actually feel like their voices are being heard in an effective way that includes in university issues and university policies.
Thank you. Mohammed, in your statement, you mentioned putting an emphasis on various heritage months here at SDSU. How would you go beyond the university's current efforts to recognize heritage months in order to empower minority communities on campus? You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and that starts now.
So once again, working at the CIR upstairs, I've been able to help organize events for various heritage months. It's a beautiful thing that we have on campus, that we allow various cultures to express themselves in their heritage through culture, food, and much more. The issue is that this typically sticks to the community. In April, we have Swana, or Arab Heritage Month. You know, one of my favorite months where we show off our dances, our food, but oftentimes it's just other people of that same background. Given the name intercultural, I want these events to be more intercultural, for people of other backgrounds to attend these events so that we can learn from each other and empower each other. It's important to shed light on each community, but if we're isolated, then nothing gets done. We remain in our own little islands. We show our culture and our passions, but it remains to ourselves. It's almost an echo chamber. That is not something that we should have on campus, and in my goal as the Vice President of University Affairs, I plan to create those bridges between the different communities so that we can all be empowered together.
Thank you. Trinity, going back to the transparent grading Bill of Rights that you would want to establish, this might create conflict with faculty. When fostering dialogues with faculty, how do you plan to address potential barriers or resistance to open communications? And what strategies will you employ to build constructive relationships? You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and that starts now.
I think finding common ground with faculty and utilizing my presence in the University Senate as a student representative on the University Senate is very crucial to making sure that faculty's expressions are also heard in this matter. I would also want to allow students to come into University Senate meetings and petition to implement this Student Bill of Rights, despite how much conflict, because at the end of the day, student voices still need to be heard. And this is a change that I definitely want to see if I were to be elected as the Vice President of University Affairs.
Thank you. Mohammed, in your statement, you mentioned a commitment to uplifting and empowering all students. How do you plan to ensure that the resources and support provided to underrepresented and marginalized communities are tailored to their specific needs and challenges? You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and your time starts now.
You know, ultimately speaking, we cannot speak for individuals and individual communities. That is why we must allow them to speak on their own behalf. We must give each and every of these underrepresented communities a spotlight, an ability to voice their concerns with anything going on campus, whether it be ongoing issues or changes that they would like to see come forward. In that way, we can ensure that we are not shifting the words of any community and then coming up with no change at the end. We must make sure that every single marginalized community has a direct line of communication in being able to express their issues. In that way, we are not creating useless change and even wasting funds. In that way, we are doing exactly what the people are asking of us. Thank you.
Okay, we have one more individual question for the both of you before we'll go into closing remarks. So this next one is for Trinity. Give me 1 second. How will you navigate potential challenges or opposition from various stakeholders in implementing your proposed initiatives? And what strategies will you employ to overcome such obstacles? You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and that starts now.
I think emphasizing how much the student voice actually matters on this campus. Being a representative for students and being an AS, we are the student representatives. Our voice needs to matter. And because of this, we need to have conversations where the student voice can actually voice their concerns and see changes within AS if they, and all throughout the university, if they see fit. Thank you.
Thank you. Mohammed, for your last individual question, how will you measure the effectiveness of your initiatives in addressing issues of discrimination and insecurity on campus? And what steps will you take to adjust your approach based on feedback and outcomes? You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and that starts now.
So this would be through several means. One, as I mentioned before, would be to hopefully create some sort of database with statistics. Something that may be unclear in the first couple of years, but something that can stay as part of SDSU. Something that can stay for the years moving on once we have already graduated and moved on. In that way, we can track year to year, month to month, the trends that are ongoing on campus. The trends in relation to hate, the trends in relation to attacks. And that way we can see what is going on. And that can act as a reaction to our action. So if we implement some sort of initiative and after a specific amount of time we see that nothing has changed, we know that we need to get back to the drawing board and get action done. The other half of this would go back to communication, in that we should voice the concerns of the students. We shouldn't just sign a bill and move on and act like everything is great now. We should have frequent meetings with students, forums, ways for students to express how they're feeling themselves. We could have a giant initiative, but if we don't hear from the students, then we have achieved nothing. In that way, we should be able to hear from students very frequently how they feel of our actions and how successful our actions have become. Thank you.
Thank you both. We are now going to move into closing remarks with our final question. Trinity, why should students vote for you instead of your opposing candidate for the position of Vice President of University Affairs? You will have 2 minutes and 30 seconds to answer this question, and your time starts now.
I have been involved in AS for just this first year, but I have seen AS take on this huge new form of student advocacy, and while doing this, I also saw a change that needs to be implemented. I have given you all tangible, concrete steps towards implementing this change, and I have also served as the AS representative. I've sat on the University Affairs Board, and I am still, to this day, an advocate for students on the Student Grievances Committee. I have proposed a Student Bill of Rights, implementing a Middle Eastern North African Student Resource Center, and hosting open forums and a stronger push of the Your Voice Matters initiative. It is time that student voices are truly represented on this campus, and it is time that student voices are truly represented on this campus. So vote DANG to go out with a bang, and I represent Blueprint SDSU. Thank you guys for considering me.
Thank you, Trinity. And Mohammed, for your last question, why should students vote for you instead of your opposing candidate for the position of Vice President of University Affairs? You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds to answer this question, and your time starts now.
So I have worked tirelessly, both on and off campus, to ensure that communities are properly heard. I have seen and felt the pain of those that are ignored. myself included in the past 5 months, when the school didn't want to mention the word Palestinian, when the school didn't want to condemn Islamophobia at any scale. I am not here to fulfill my own personal needs. I am here because I have seen how lackluster the action has been. When I first got here at SDSU, people were terrified to speak about their Palestinian views. I was even told by some peers to give up, obviously based off of how people were exposed in the past. They told me there was no chance at SDSU to get anything done. But here we are. We recently passed a ceasefire resolution with associated students. It passed nearly unanimously. 3 years ago, this would have been seen as impossible, and yet we got it done. I'm not here to be comfortable and stay in a static state. Otherwise, I would not have pushed for a resolution that got me a lot of hate and threats. I am here to cause change and disruption. I am here to stand for every student that has been wronged by this administration and the school. As your Vice President of University Affairs, I want to be your representative. I want to hear all concerns, new and old, that students may have. I want to ensure that all voices are heard. We will push and promote the Your Voice Matters initiative and hopefully make history at San Diego State University. Vote for Mohammed, vote for Rise SDSU. Thank you.
Thank you, Trinity and Mohammed. Thus concludes the debate for VP of University Affairs. Thank you to everyone in the audience who attended today.